Welcome back to codingcat.dev, where we give you cats the freshest dose of dev snacks. Here is Alex Patterson and Brittany Postma. This episode brought to you by Storyblok. Build anything and publish everywhere. Welcome. I feel like I haven't said hello in a million years since I've been gone. So just getting back from vacation. We're probably a couple episodes behind. Usually I record a bunch before I take off or something, but got lazy this year, which feels weird to me. Usually we record like 7 episodes before I take off.
We try, but then sometimes you just get busy and things happen and you have to take some time to recharge sometimes. So
it's been nice.
But we're glad to have you back. We're glad to be back.
Yeah, it's super awesome. So I spent 2 weeks in Africa, which was wild. It seems like crazy long and like super fast all at the same time, if that makes sense. I got to see what they call the Big Five, which I'm not going to get this right, but it's elephants, lions, I think it's leopard. I'm not going to get it right. So I saw like everything, which was incredible.
A cheetah? You showed me a cheetah.
I don't think cheetahs
on the list. Big Five?
I found out the Big Five
Giraffe?
is the 5 that are most hunted or were most hunted back in the day.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening. So anyways, also Brandon is joining us today to talk all about Flightcontrol. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm kind of curious. Let's break into what I originally know Brandon from. So Blitz.js was kind of the thing that, I don't know, for better words, put you on the map, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so what do you still do with Blitz.js these days?
So we continue to maintain it part-time. We are marking it the 2.0 stable release, I think actually this week. And so yeah, continuing to maintain it, to fix it, add small improvements. It's kind of like old news at this point, and JavaScript devs always looking for the shiny new thing. So it doesn't have the buzz like it used to, but there's still lots of people using it for production apps and even starting new production apps with it today.
I don't want to go too far down that path because I know we're not here for Blitz.js today, but is it like similar to Redwood, what Redwood does?
Yes, very, very similar. It's basically just a different approach that is built on top of Next.js instead of a GraphQL-centric thing. It also kind of really brought the RPC back into fashion. We were kind of the first framework really to embrace RPC in this latest few years, and now it seems like every framework is building RPC into it. So
sweet,
nice. And so prior to that, before I knew you, can you give us a little bit breakdown of why you started working on those type of projects and kind of got into this space to start with?
Yeah, I've been a software engineer my whole career. Started as an intern in 2010, doing embedded programming like microcomputer chips, controlling motors and lasers and stuff, which is kind of fun, but gets boring after a while. And I was like, I want to be more creative. And I was like seeing, JavaScript shops, like agencies or whatever, with their like ping pong tables and fancy offices. And I was like, that's what I want. Like, I'm in this boring gray cubicle. I need something better. And also I kind of got bit with the entrepreneur bug early on. I was like, kind of realized the power of software and how scalable it is. And so even a single person can build like a decent, pretty large business through software. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this someday. And so kind of been working towards that. The first kind of step I made in that direction was become a consultant, do freelancing for about 4 years. And that was a big step, like going from a stable job to, I don't know where I'm going to get my paycheck from, but that was like the best thing that I could have done. I went from working in the office to remote. This is overnight. I went from working in the office to a remote, went from 40 hours a week to 30 hours a week, and almost tripled my income.
Wow, that's incredible. How did you have enough work coming in at that point to be able to do that?
Well, I didn't. So I was actually moving states at that point from Minnesota back to Ohio. And I had to quit. So it was a forcing function for me to kind of make this move. And so I knew it was coming up. I was trying to find work. But a month before the move, I still didn't have anything lined up. So I went ahead and told my employer, I was like, hey, I'm leaving. But like, I know you've lined me up to build this new web app, and really I'm the only one that has the skills to do it. I'm happy to keep on as a contractor and build this thing for you. And they're like, sure. So it worked out.
That's awesome. That's always like the best scenario, right? Like you're not like taking anyone off because you're leaving. You get work to continue going. That's amazing. That's really cool. And so that kind of led you into like you saw Next.js and that's when Blitz started, or is there a bunch of hops before that?
Yeah. I got into web programming through Ruby on Rails. So that was kind of my background. But as a consultant, I was entirely JavaScript and TypeScript and React. And that's what I really love the most. But I really missed that developer experience that Rails had. There's just so much value in a batteries included framework. And even still, I reminisce about going back to Rails because it's just so great. So many things I love there. And
I'll give my Rails code base to you that I work in.
I might have to catch that same bug. Every time I've gone down the Ruby and Rails side of things, I'm like, I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I think it probably depends on the code base you're in, but
I need to spend some time over there.
So yeah, I was just kind of yearning for that sort of developer experience, and had this idea of creating this sort of Ruby on Rails for JavaScript and React, and that's kind of where Blitz came out. And it was kind of at a time in early 2020 before the pandemic had hit, but there's a bunch of people kind of, I don't know, ready for something new, ready for something better and different. And so it really kind of struck a nerve. And so it got a lot of people interested in it. Not as many people actually ended up using it because at the end of the day, JavaScript devs like to build their empire from scratch instead of using a batteries included framework. But that definitely, it taught me, I got experience running an open source project. It was the first open source project I'd ever done. I realized that I really like building developer tools and have a good knack for developer experience and even marketing developer tools. And so that really kind of set me on the path.
Did you end up like learning a lot from, especially on the DX side, and getting responses from people when it's such an large open source project like that? There's a lot of like negative feedback, positive feedback. How did you handle that, and like how did you adjust to it?
Actually, didn't have hardly any problems. Like I kind of am a believer that you kind of get out of the world what you put into it. And I was just very intentional about putting a lot of positivity into the project and community. And, like almost anyone I've ever talked to that actually knew a little bit about it, they liked the idea. They thought it was a great idea, even if ultimately they didn't choose it for their project. So it was good.
It's kind of interesting, like the comparison between Blitz and Redwood. And Redwood, I feel like anyone that uses it is just in love with it. They love the community the most. And I feel like those positive communities are awesome to establish and create. It's such a benefiting, human aspect to it.
I think in that open source world in general, you have to have that mindset and mentality going in because if you put your face out there, you have to have like a strong will to take those comments and know that you're going to get them and be able to take it and then put the positivity back out there and be willing to build the community up. And
yeah. I feel like no matter what you do, you're going to run into haters, and it's just unfortunate. So it's good that you still came out of that positive and are still working in that space. So how did that transition? Like, I feel like the next thing I heard from you was Flightcontrol, right? How did that kind of come around?
So like I said earlier, been working towards having my own software company. And so Blitz was kind of a detour because it wasn't making money. Like I got a sponsor, like a couple $1,000s a month in sponsorship money or something. But nothing significant. And so I wasn't long into that. I was already thinking about what kind of business would I build around it. And hosting was like kind of the biggest pain point that I'd experienced. And like I've never been an AWS expert. like, no, it's just been, I tried using it sometime during my consulting, like took over a project, and it was just absolute nightmare. Understood nothing. Because I was using like this thing called Elastic Beanstalk, and oh my goodness, wow. So I demand a good developer experience. And so, I really liked Heroku and Vercel developer experiences, but I kept running into just too many limitations and wanting to use like the first class AWS services, like things like SQS, DynamoDB, and these things that are like really powerful and really incredible services, but it's just too much friction to like for an average developer to be able to use them. I was like, why can't we have this good developer experience, but on my own AWS account where I get the best in the arguably the best in breed services from AWS, and that's really kind of what started Flightcontrol.
Nice. If I was to compare Flightcontrol to like AWS Amplify, is there true comparisons there, or is it different?
So it's Amplify is actually more like a traditional platform as a service that fully abstracts the infrastructure. And so you have the same amount of limitations and lack of visibility and control into what's going on as you do with Vercel or whatever.
Sure.
And so how Flightcontrol works is you connect your GitHub account and your AWS account to Flightcontrol, and you do just some simple configuration like your build command, start command, even though it's automatically detected in many cases, and we automate the rest. So like it's hands off. You don't have to know about AWS. So it's super easy to get started. But the big power and the benefit comes that it's in your account, and you can go into your AWS account. You can see all the infrastructure, all the logs, all the controls, adjust things. It's fully yours. Cool. And so it sets you up for long-term success much more than a PaaS, which as a company grows, you tend to outgrow a PaaS. And so this really becomes technical debt. And so the other option is hiring an army of DevOps engineers to just do a whole bunch of stuff by hand. And that's very expensive and doesn't make sense. And so it's like we're kind of threading that needle with a new approach.
Totally. Cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll dive into Flightcontrol further. Check it out.
How in the world could I forget about this?
There's no need to freak out. We have Storyblok.
Robert, you're right.
But we still need a plan.
Okay, how much time do we have left until the launch?
24 hours.
Okay, let's go.
We are ready to publish.
So let's get this baby online.
Let's get this baby online. All right. All right, we're back with Brandon from Flightcontrol. We're just gonna start to kind of break down a little bit more. We're comparing Flightcontrol with AWS Amplify, but we kind of want to understand and where developers' needs are when you're using Flightcontrol. So first of all, I'll pop up the screen real quick just to show off the awesome website you guys have built. I really enjoy it. The subtle like plane flying. It's just, I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully this is through.
You can see.
That thing like gets me every time. I'm like, that's so sweet. So what we're going to kind of dive into, and Brandon, you can steer me if you want, or we can just chat through it. But I've kind of walked through the basics of setting something up, and I'm kind of curious. I'd set up like a Next.js repo. Could we walk through like what something like that would look like as I set it up?
Sure.
You didn't set up a Blitz.js repo?
I probably should have. Sorry.
No, that's totally fine.
I think I started trying this. We'll see. Oh no, maybe that's a problem.
Create a new account. If you go to the top right corner,
okay,
and do a new organization.
Just do one of these. Sweet. Perfect. So that one. So at this point, I basically what I had was just a bare Next.js setup, create next, and that's sitting out in our repo. And if I click this, so this is it. Like it's just the new Next.js setup with the app router. So
Cool.
all this is. And it's already kind of picked that up because I gave it just the single repo access, and we're kind of walking through the GUI config at this point. Is that correct?
Yep. So we have two different configuration types. Your classic GUI config, which you'd be familiar with from like Vercel or Heroku, where it's basically through a UI. But we also support Flightcontrol.json, which is a infrastructure as code. And so the benefit of infrastructure as code is that all the configuration for your infrastructure, for your app deployments, is in your code. And so you can comment on pull request, and you get a source of truth there. It's easy to reproduce things, copy and paste, and so there's a ton of benefits there. But the problem with traditional infrastructure as code like Terraform is that it's very low level.
Yeah.
And so it's basically just as hard as using AWS through the console. And so our infrastructure as code is a higher level abstraction. And so it's developer first. It's designed for developers to be able to define all the stuff that they care about, build commands, server size, number of instances, etc.
A really nice feature just to even in the GUI have that. Could you just click on it and let me see it? Because can you like type, can you type in here and then that would edit that for you?
So not right now, but we are rebuilding the entire dashboard right now with all new UI, UX. This has been designed by me, an engineer, and so it's functional, but the new dashboard coming is going to be absolutely incredible. And it does allow you to basically use the GUI config, and then it'll just give you the JSON to copy and paste and put in your code if you want.
That would be really nice to be able to like use either or and to edit, because even like Vercel and Netlify, they give you like a TOML file, or I don't know what Vercel gives you, but they give you some configuration locally too, but it doesn't like automatically sync up between what you see in your GUI and what you have locally, and they will fight each other. And it's really annoying.
Yeah, there's no fighting here. It's driven by only one or the other. And one thing we do want to add is basically the ability to edit the Flightcontrol JSON in your repo through our dashboard.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Very cool. Environment at this point, would that really matter for much?
Doesn't matter.
So just go development, and then for mine, I'm just going to pick Next.js.
Perfect.
So what do we have here? Like, I know people are used to kind of AWS, they understand Fargate, but like, what are these different options over here?
So AWS Fargate it's actually almost an alternative to Kubernetes. It's a container orchestration service by AWS. And so it gives you long-running containers, so not serverless functions. And it looks like my camera is doing a little silly dance that should come back soon. Anyways, so you can define your instance size, which is your CPU and memory. And then on the left side is your build system.
I'm not familiar with Nix packs. What are those?
Nix packs is are you familiar with Heroku build packs?
I'm not. No, I never really did much on Heroku. Docker, yes.
Heroku kind of created this concept of build packs for adding the native dependencies that your app needs. So like whether you need Ruby or Node.js or like some kind of image magic or something like these native dependencies. And so Nix packs is a successor to that is better in a number of ways, but it'll basically, for the most part, automatically detect the dependencies that you need, like Node.js, Ruby, Yarn, PHP, any other things. It'll add those, and then you have full control to customize it to add specific things if you need it.
Cool. And that's outside of the traditional, or not traditional, but outside of your NPM package file for your actual application.
Right. This is like the OS layer. Yeah. So it actually generates a Docker file.
Oh, it does. Okay.
And builds a Docker image for you. Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
So this is something that Nixpacks is an open source project that anyone can use. if you're like, instead of handwriting a Docker file, you just use Nix packs, and most people will result in a faster build and a smaller image size than hand rolling a Docker file.
Cool. That makes sense.
But we do support bringing your own custom Docker file if you want to.
Awesome. And so if we were to leave kind of these install build commands, theoretically, it'll pick up the framework of choice.
Good work.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Standard port, health, all that fun. And then let's see, what else do we have? As I go down, I'm going to stick it in US East. And that should be it looks like.
Should be all.
Let's try her out. I thought I already did this. It must be per org. That's
Yeah.
So the cool part here, if no one's ever been in AWS, and you can probably do this better than I can, but there's this kind of CloudFormation is infrastructure as code like tool that is used, and this is one of the stacks being created. And it looks like you have provided like this flight control access unique code for each stack that's coming out.
Yeah. So this, if you already made this, I think you'll need to delete that existing stack.
Okay, let me go
the previous.
So I think I have this one already.
Yeah, go ahead and delete that one.
Okay.
So this stack, once it's created, it gives our account secure access into your account, and so we don't have to store any kind of security keys or whatever. It's all AWS first class access management.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, it's awesome. So it looks like environment is being provisioned. So if we were to look at this on AWS, we would actually see this kind of occurring in CloudFormation.
So we use CloudFormation to create the initial infrastructure. Makes it easy to clean everything up if you want to delete it. But on subsequent deploys, we don't use CloudFormation because CloudFormation is very slow. And so we're doing everything we can to optimize for speed. And so what we do is we surgically update AWS using the API. So we only change exactly what needs to be done, and it's much faster than CloudFormation.
Cool. That's awesome.
I like the
So-
surgically.
So
Reminds me of
we're seeing here the one kind of difference from using something like Heroku or Vercel is that it does take about 15 minutes to create a project. And that's because it's creating dedicated infrastructure for you. So they don't, where like Heroku can have a server warmed up and ready to swap in, ready for you. It's just a one-time thing getting it set up, and then you get that benefit of no one else touching your servers.
Nice. And then every time like we're doing development and we push to the repo, is it going to pick up and run the actual like Next.js build and all that fun stuff?
Yep. So automatic get push deploys. We have preview environments. And so I know there was a question around like, when would you kind of outgrow Vercel or something?
Yeah.
So there are, one thing is like if you want to use a server versus serverless functions, right? So most platforms only have one or the other. And right now we only have servers, but we'll be adding serverless functions later this year. I think it's really important for a platform to support both because they're not one size fits all. Like sometimes a serverless function is better. Sometimes a server is better. Because sometimes cold starts can be too much latency for your user-facing request. And so the problem is when a platform only supports one, then they're hyping up that model as like the one solution for everything. It's not really honest about what is actually best for you. And so I think that is important.
I think we saw a lot of that with like Remix occurring, right? Kind of that similar model.
Are they going to be built like the Lambdas off of like the AWS kind of
So
serverless?
it'd be very similar to Vercel's developer experience, but using native AWS Lambda. And so you won't have the 10-second or the 30 or 60-second limitations that Vercel has. Netlify probably has similar. You'll get the full 15 minutes that you'll get the role Lambda access. So.
Nice. What are like, just in general, because I'm kind of curious, what are any other additions that you would see kind of going forward because you own all of the infrastructure? Can you swap out databases? Like what does all of that look like then?
So one of the big things with this approach is that for preview environments, you can have a preview environment for everything. So not just your front end, but also your back end, your server, your database, your Redis, your background workers can all be provisioned temporarily for a pull request and then automatically destroyed.
Oh, nice. So like that's kind of like the Neon DB type of model for backend, like on a actual
sort of,
like
yeah.
commit.
But it's instead of just one component, it's all your components together.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So why? I know this is probably a loaded question. Maybe there's right or wrong answer, but why would someone kind of go down this road instead of like a Vercel or Netlify? Is it just because of that? Yes, it's easy to like have your first startup projects, but like beyond that, things get a lot more difficult.
So Vercel and Netlify are really great for front end. Like that's what they're focused on. Really, just front end stuff. They have like the comments on the UI for preview environments and things like this. But when it comes to backend, they're not like designed well for backend. They can do backend stuff, but most people running a serious app in production are going to have too many limitations. Like they want to have their database more securely, like behind a VPC, and not have it open to the internet, which you can't do with Vercel. Maybe they just need longer execution duration without being on Vercel's enterprise plan, or just cost in general if you're doing a lot of heavy background processing, because Vercel has a 6.6 markup over AWS Lambda cost.
Yep.
And so if you're doing a lot of server processing, that adds up really quickly.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Heroku is also often like a very expensive, and they're also like just deteriorating. Actually, they had a downtime today. So reliability is another reason to go to AWS. Another one is access to more regions, because most of the traditional platforms as a service only support like maybe one region, maybe a few. Where with direct AWS, you get access to every single region.
You mentioned like when we were provisioning the server, it takes like 15 to 20 minutes. And you mentioned that you're adding serverless to prevent like some of these cold starts and things. So the server that is provisioning is not going to be running continuously then. It is going to like go up and down.
So the one that we support today is a long running server. It's running all the time. You define how many instances and how big that is, but it is running all the time, which means you don't have any cold starts. It's always there, blazing fast for serving a user request.
So at what point would you want to use serverless then?
So serverless is better usually for background processing, for things that are not user facing, or for like asynchronous events. Like sometimes some event might happen and it's not continuous, and so it's like things that are bursty, even if you're serving user traffic, but it's very bursty. Like most of the time you don't have very much, but then all of a sudden in a short amount of time you have a whole bunch. Serverless function can be really good for that, because servers can scale. They scale too, but it just scales a little bit slower. It's not in 2 seconds, or like a serverless function. It's going to be more like 30 seconds or a minute.
Gotcha.
So it's more rare. Like I think most people do better with a long running server, unless they're very low traffic, like a hobby project.
Yeah.
Or like a very kind of abnormal usage.
How deep or like how much integration into AWS do you foresee kind of getting into? Like the thing that pops in my head is like SQS queues and things like that. Do you see that kind of the next step you're going to get into, or?
Yes. We definitely, there's so much we want to build. Frustratingly, it just takes so long to, it's just so much complexity, and to do it right and to do it with a good user experience, it just takes time. But yeah, the very next thing that, we're working on this dashboard rebuild that adds a ton of functionality into the dashboard, like live AWS cost. So that's something that can be difficult to know how much is your AWS stuff actually costing. And we'll show that right in the UI. We'll be adding CPU and memory charts, runtime logs, all in our dashboard, trying to keep you out of AWS as much as possible.
Nice.
And then after that, we'll be building a blazing fast build system that is a custom built thing that should keep your builds to under a minute for many people. And then after that will probably be the big one will be serverless function support.
Nice. Awesome. So yeah, I just brought up if you want to, submit feedback or ideas, and then kind of Brandon has like what they're working on in progress up here for different items, and then what they're planning on doing next. So it's awesome. That visibility is really incredible.
Yeah.
This app is built with Blitz and hosted on Flightcontrol, by the way. And it's a different company called Product Lane. But yeah, built with Blitz, hosted on Flightcontrol.
Oh, nice. So Product Lane is actually a Blitz created with Blitz. That's awesome. I thought you were building this on top of it. I was like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of work.
How big is your team?
We are 5 full-time with a contractor, plus a contractor, and plus an intern.
Nice. And a lot of consulting at the same time too, to kind of keep the lights on.
No, we raised $3.5 million in funding.
Nice.
Went through Y Combinator.
Sorry.
And yeah, so that is like
congratulations.
Thanks. In various circles, sometimes VC funding gets a bad rap, and they're like, "Oh, bootstrapping is like the best to go." And I used to be in sort of the bootstrapping camp, like that was kind of my default. So we were intentional about going to raise funding because we just, like, I was maintaining Blitz. I needed to hire someone to work on that while I worked on Flightcontrol. My co-founder and I have full-time jobs and had people to support, and like, so
yeah,
we needed funding. And now my take is bootstrapping is overrated. It certainly has this place, but it's so much nicer having lots of money in the bank. It allows you to really focus on doing the product justice, and without having to be so stressed about where the next dollar is going to come from.
I might have to invite you to one of our pods where we discuss this, because I've gone through 2 VC backed and now a bootstrapped that they have another product they're making a lot of money on. So it's really interesting. I want to talk like all about it.
Sure.
In other words, it's the developer go-to of it depends.
Yes.
Right.
Well said.
Can we show the pricing too before we wrap up, just to like go over like what the pricing is?
Yeah, let me bring it up.
So free for individuals, and then self-serve plan for teams. That is $12 per service per month, and 45 cents per deployment.
So the tricky part, or the thing that kind of popped up that people might have caught, if I'm still in this free for individuals, that is the Flightcontrol side of it, but it might cost up to $25-ish on AWS services still.
Correct. So you're still in the hook for AWS cost, which is typically going to be cheaper than a platform as a service. Like altogether, Flightcontrol plus AWS is pretty on par with what you would expect somewhere else. But you can get AWS credits quite easily. And we have a page in our documentation with all the ways that we know how to do this. And so that can make your AWS costs free.
Nice.
Yep, totally. If you haven't joined or you don't know about AWS Community Builders, is what I'm a part of as well on the front end side of things. There's all kinds of benefits to that. So if you're a developer watching this, definitely check that out. There's lots of cool things that they give you, including credits on top of like resources and things like that. So definitely check that out too.
You missed that comment.
Perfect. Pick that.
It says my total infrastructure bill went from $2,000 a month on Vercel to under $300 a month on Flightcontrol. Is the comment like right underneath the pricing?
And that was someone who had a lot of heavy server-side usage. And
like the serverless function usage that we were talking about earlier. Yep.
It adds up quick, for sure. Yeah. Very cool.
That 6% increase probably adds up.
I did want to touch on like let's say the hardcore folks that are like, what do I need flight control for? I can just use CloudFormation, or I can just use Pulumi or one of these other infrastructure as code options. Is there an argument kind of against that, like for flight control and kind of the like maybe not now, but in the future as well?
So I would ask these people to really think about, like, are you, like, why do you think that you need to actually do it yourself? Like, is this actually going to meaningfully change your company, your business? Like, yeah, you have like nitty gritty control over everything, you know, but you actually have to build it from scratch. Even if you've done it before, you have to maintain it. Your team's going to grow. Someone else is probably going to have to come along and maintain it, and maybe they don't know how to, and they have to waste time learning it. Or you hire someone, and yeah, it gets the job done. But like, is it really worth it? You know, what we find is a lot of startups that have done this, like I've already set up AWS stuff before. When they start a startup, that's kind of their default. They just do it, and it works for a while until they start scaling the team, and then it becomes a headache. And then they like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to have preview environments and things like this. And then like, oh, here's another whole, you know, weeks of whatever trying to, you know, improve the stuff. And it's like, you're just so much better off using a platform that you know, like Flight Control, that gives you sort of the best of both. It gives you a much faster time to market, much easier sort of developer experience, but it still gives you a lot of that control that you actually were looking for.
Nice. Sorry to put you on the spot. Great answer.
That's probably who's going to benefit the most from something like flight control. But do you think there's room for teams that maybe already have like a development environment set up on AWS and have maybe a few on like a DevOps team, but if they don't have like a large team, do you think there's benefit there for those teams?
Most often we find that teams will choose us if they don't have a full-time DevOps. If they've already hired a full-time DevOps, you should probably fire them and use flight control. But that's not typically what happens.
Maybe let's not recommend that in this economy.
We just lost half our audience. Sorry, folks.
I would recommend DevOps folks learn to code and become backend engineers. It'll provide a lot more value to the company that way.
That's fair. That's a interesting and maybe legitimate opinion. I like it. All right.
Yeah, I did want to mention that we're really, really good for people who are looking to migrate off of Heroku. I think most people that own Heroku have probably thought about it. And so we have some guides on how to do this. We're also available for anyone that's going to be on a paid plan. We'll help with migrations for free to help make sure it's a fast and success for you. And usually we've done this multiple times. Usually the migration is actually very easy. The hardest thing is migrating the database, but even that's not that hard. We have a guide for that, and we can help you through it. So definitely like check us out if you're in that situation.
Nice. Love it. I was just going to bring up that page real quick, make sure everyone sees it. Migrate from Heroku to AWS. It's interesting. I feel like when Heroku made the decision to have a no free tier, things really started to go weird with Heroku. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
It really is.
They don't even support HTTP2 and like some of these things. It's just an aging dinosaur.
Yeah, it's too bad because I never personally got that involved with it, but I've only heard great things. So cool. Well, I think we've probably given Brandon enough time for perfect picks, but I'll let Brittany go first. Brittany, can you tell the story along with this since you started to tell us?
I can. So I told this story before and I got laughed at. So I'll tell it again. I got this controller to play on my iPad when I was playing Diablo, which they have like an iPad tablet version of Diablo, and I enjoy playing that sometimes. But it worked really well, syncs up, pairs, it's Bluetooth, so it pairs with the iPad, and then I can use a controller instead of having to, I have the iPad Air, so it's like, I don't know, maybe maybe not quite 12 inches. I think it's 10 inches. But it's pretty big, and I don't want to hold it and play. So I like having the controller to play with. And I can sit back from it. I have what's the keyboard? The Magic Keyboard dock for my iPad. So it's like a laptop basically. So I don't like to like play games on that. So I like to sit it away from me and have the controller. So I've gotten back into Minecraft. I'd gotten out of it for a while, and I got back into it again last weekend, and I started playing. I downloaded Pocket version, which is the iPad or phone version. And yesterday I went to B-Dub's Buffalo Wild Wings to eat, and I was playing Minecraft at my table at Buffalo Wild Wings on my iPad with this thing, and it was pretty awesome. I had like 2.5 hours though to spare while my daughter was in gymnastics. So
She's
like, why
sitting
not
at B-Dubs playing on her controller, folks. I don't know.
It's awesome.
There's something interesting there. I'm
I
not
had
gonna
it
say
like
more.
kind of under the table so nobody could see it. But
Okay, there it is. The embarrassment was there. She was aware of it. I guess we're okay then.
I was in the corner. Nobody saw me. It's fine.
How many wings did you have?
I didn't have any wings. Oh, I had this thing called a bird dog. Have you heard of this thing? I have to
I
talk
have
about it
heard of
now.
a bird dog, yeah.
Oh, it was so weird, and I was weirded out by it, but it is a chicken strip on a hot dog bun. And I got the loaded one, and it was actually kind of good. To be honest, it's not really that different than a chicken sandwich, but it's still weird.
I think you've been out of the South too long. Like, that's probably a common thing down there.
I had never seen a bird dog anywhere in my life. And yeah,
That's hilarious.
maybe I have been out of the South too long because I've been out for like 16, 17 years. So
Nice. Okay, I will go next. I don't have a fun story for mine, but Vercel, of course, is, as they are dominantly picking up developers, I feel like. I think they hired the whole team behind this, but Shadcyan UI has been something that's kind of been floating around. I've checked out on and off. The interesting part to it is there's not like an NPM repo of things. You just kind of copy and paste these, and you place them. Let me see if I can find this. Maybe, yeah. So this is how the app structure works. Here's your component UIs. And they're all kind of individual pieces that you can drop in, and then you can change them at will and like have the defaults and all that fun stuff. So it's a very basic and simple kind of set of
click the code
structure.
tab there so you can see the actual code that
Sorry.
on the page. There you go. And then you would actually like copy that and put that into your code base, right? Or you install. I guess I don't know how.
Yeah, so the whole thing's based on Radix UI. So Radix is kind of this like skeleton type of system, if you will.
With no styles at all.
Yeah, and so you can basically start with these defaults and you pull them in out of your own components here. Like it's not actually an NPM repo that you're pulling it from. So
I think this is how to use it. Can you scroll down to the installation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that shows like what you would.
So here's your typical.
That's the tailwind config.
So I do the manual. I bet it shows you a code that you basically copy and paste. I'm a big fan of this approach. Like I was working. This was in 2018, I think. I was working on basically this exact thing of a component library that was copy and paste. Because I'm a big fan of copy and paste so that you get started very easily, but then you own it, and you're not at someone else's mercy. So this is super cool.
Yeah, it's always really interesting. Like Brittany and I, we've built so many component libraries over the years. It's challenging, and it's kind of a simple approach to do it. So definitely check this out. Probably the big news was that Vercel acquired another awesome developer. That's interesting. So we'll see how much they end up using. They might come out with a new theming engine. Who knows what's going on over there, but we'll see. I think, Brandon, you sent me, hopefully this is the right link.
The Twitter link, yes. So that's my pick is to buy your own airplane.
Holy smokes. This is
Wow.
crazy. Do you maintain this as well?
Yes. So this was just a few months ago, back in the April, that I bought this. It is an
Wow.
absolute blast.
That's so crazy. So what do you do with this? You go up and just hang out and fly around, or do you do shows? What else?
So all of the above. Go fly, go do loops, aerobatics, rolls, all that fun stuff. I've had it for display at an air show, and then I also fly to conferences with it.
No way.
Yeah.
Is it single seater or dual?
It's two, one in front of the other.
So like you could come pick me up, we could fly around. Is that what you're telling
Yes.
me? All right, I'll pay for gas. Come pick me up.
And it does have the Flightcontrol logo on it now.
I think you're in Ohio now, right?
I was like, where are you based?
It's a quick trip up to
I'm coming to
Grand Rapids.
Sandusky next week, so
Yeah, I tell people, anyone who wants, come visit me in Ohio or at a conference or something, and I'll take you flying.
That's so
Nice.
cool. I love it. Very good. Well, if we haven't covered it enough, definitely go check out Flight Control. Brandon is going to be working on that for probably, a while in the future.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully we'll IPO someday.
exactly. That's the goal. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.